All right, welcome to another episode of the Magic Box Talk Show. Yay! Hey, where's the clapper? There it is. Yay! So, we are here right now at the Dollar City Fun City store. We're on Front Street in Santa Cruz, California, United States. And boy, the Dollar City is a really great store if you want to get your giant plumbing wrenches. Or as you can see along here, it's a great place for Halloween. That's coming up in a couple months, depending on when you watch the YouTube. Yay for Halloween! Halloween is a lot of fun in Santa Cruz. If you've never been to Halloween in Santa Cruz, it's certainly something you should experience at least once in your lifetime. So yeah, if you're looking for Halloween supplies, this is a great place. You can also get, toiletries, canned food, kitchenware, art, all sorts of things.
I found a huge tweezers. They were 12 inches long.
Oh yeah, which is useful for
when
for
you have
your
big,
artwork.
clumsy hands.
You do, absolutely. Yeah, that's yes. Tweezers are much less clumsy than fingers. It's true. So, hey, nobody watching this knows who you are. This is Stephen Lynch as our guest. Yay! And Stephen Lynch is you're a local artist. You're a sculptor. So let's see. Tell us something about that. How would you describe the sculpture pieces that you produce?
Well, I would call. It's always hard for me to. For example, the one on the right over there. That's from my lead canvas series.
Okay.
And so all the canvases are covered in lead wine foils.
Okay.
Because wine foils used to be on bottles, which are now aluminum and plastic.
Yes.
They used to be covered in lead.
Yes.
Lead foil. So
back when they weren't so worried about lead poisoning.
yes, exactly. Yeah. They did figure people weren't going to be drinking out of the bottle with their mouth.
That was the theory, at least. Right.
But that piece has aluminum and lead pieces in it, a combo.
Okay.
Which is why you have the two tones on the metal.
Oh, interesting.
So I would say, my work is mixed media, but it's always about recycling usually.
But found objects, and so you don't go out and buy things for your art.
I do on occasion, but it's
That's not
like
that's not your primary emphasis.
No, it's not like I go buy a paint and I buy a canvas and then I paint something. It's usually I buy an artist supply like encaustic wax because I need it to adhere the lead to the canvas.
Right. Yeah.
And all the canvases, scrap stuff that I've saved from jobs I've done, and all the wood frames are usually remnants from.
So you're taking things that would ordinarily end up in a landfill and turning them into beautiful art objects.
That's my approach. Yeah.
So let's see. We've got one here. You mentioned the lead, and then this other one here has this really interesting piece of plastic backing it with these patterns on the piece of plastic. So how did these patterns get onto the plastic there?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that, like I told you earlier, people stop at my door and leave stuff for me.
Oh, right.
That piece of plastic showed up with those 3 holes drilled in it, just like that.
Wow.
I was just leaning up against my door, from Margaret, so one of my friends. So I had this piece, and then I came across this tangle of wires. I think it's from a computer or something, out in the street.
They're electrical wires?
Yeah, I think it's like part of a hookup on a computer board or something.
Oh, okay.
And it had been run over repeatedly and created this nice pattern. So
that's why they're tangled like that, is because cars have driven over them?
Over and
oh,
over.
wow.
And over.
Yeah. So there's a whole process that's going on for this to happen before you even found the object. Yeah.
Which is why I ended up making the art as it was, is that, as you mentioned, the background of the plexi piece, I took out some graphite paint.
Oh, you had painted that. See, I misunderstood what you said when we were talking before the show, and I thought that the piece of plastic had been run over by a car, and those were tire wires.
No.
But it's actually the wire that has been run over by a car.
Right.
I see.
The wire bundle is what got ran over. But in order to communicate that to the people, I took and stripped off all the paper off the plexi that had showed up my door, went out, took paint, acrylic paint, put it on my tires, then drove over the plexiglass with my own car.
Okay.
Because I'm trying to say, this is how this was made.
It hadn't been run over by cars nearly enough. So
no, the plastic.
Oh, the plastic.
So
okay.
what you see is those. It's a print, tire prints.
Oh,
from my own car.
So there was like the paint on it, and then the tire marks smeared the paint.
No, it was a clear piece of plexi,
okay.
And then I painted my tires and then backed over
I see.
repeatedly.
So you were using your tires as a paintbrush, essentially, then?
Exactly.
Oh, well, that's really cool, Steve. That's very creative, I think. I mean, going beyond, you think artwork, how is artwork made? You made artwork with pencils or paintbrushes or crayons, and so you've actually made artwork with a car.
Yeah, well, again, you were asking earlier, Robert Rauschenberg collaborated with John Cage to create a scrolled print of Cage's Model A car. And it's a tire track that's probably about 36 feet long.
Oh, wow.
And that's the first tire print.
Piece.
That's the first
tire print. Oh. Because it comes from the Model A, so that was the first car. Okay. Very cool. Very cool.
So I was inspired by that.
Well, it's really great work. So this piece on the right here, you were telling me that these little metal objects have kind of an interesting history.
Yes. Again, a friend of mine who's a landscaper had been digging a hole for a tree, and he found these 3 objects in the ground, and he saved them from me.
So it makes you wonder how they got underground in the first place.
Well, when you're, if you've ever worked on a house site,
yeah,
there's always junk that you're digging up.
It's like an archaeological dig.
It's like an archaeological dig.
Yeah.
People throw stuff out their windows or whatever, and I've worked on so many odd jobs like this that I'm always keeping an eye out when I'm digging holes, because one time I found all these ceramic balls that I just found out that it's what they would put in a rock hounds thing to polish rocks.
Okay.
So you find weird shit on building sites.
Just all kinds of stuff is probably underground we don't even know about. And so you were saying that you were using this as a sort of symbolism that has to do with religion?
Yeah, there was these 3 objects, and one of them was obviously cross-like, and I decided, I'll use these to represent the 3 major religions.
The Abrahamic.
Well, there's the top one would be Buddhism.
Oh, okay.
The middle one, Christianity, Judaism, and the third one would be Mohammedanism.
Okay.
Because
so you get 2 Abrahamic religions. Well, all 3, I guess. Then, because the cross it could be Judaism and Christianity, and then Buddhism is Eastern. So. But the ironic thing about that is these objects, turns out that what they were originally built for was.
Well, first, before you get to that part, I just want to say, I was trying, one of the things because I was building this thing without knowing what they were.
Okay.
And so I wanted to try to convey this idea of how, we need to cooperate rather than be antagonistic.
Fight over who has the best religion. Right.
Or who's right and who's wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the irony is when I discovered what the objects actually were.
Right.
They're the parts that you would put in a meat grinder to grind meat.
Oh boy! Wow.
So it's kind of weird.
That kind of adds an extra layer of irony onto because you had decided to make it a piece about religion before you knew that they came out of a meat grinder. Yeah. So we'll leave it to the audience to draw conclusions as to the deeper meaning of that. But yeah, it's very apparent once you pointed out that they do come out of the meat grinder. So that's like the screen that the little strings of meat on the bottom there.
The bottom one I think is for like making hamburger.
Yeah.
And the other one was in the middle was a slicer.
Oh, okay.
For slicing stuff.
Yeah, I see. It would spin around.
And I'm not sure what the top one actually, what the material would look like.
We'll have to get somebody who's an expert on butchery to make a comment at the bottom of right here. If you're watching on YouTube, it's right there below. just type in your comment if you know the answer to what the top object is from. So, you know, whenever I think meat grinder, the first thing that pops into my head is, of course, Pink Floyd.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not familiar.
Pink Floyd, The Wall there's a scene in The Wall with the, the We Don't Need No Education song, and the kids are in their desks on a conveyor belt, and they get turned into ground meat, and that's symbolism for what the form of education in the post-war British schools. They were known for having abusive teachers. That's what that was being used for. So Steve, your art, you work in mixed medium, as you said, primarily found objects. You mostly do sculptures, or mostly three-dimensional pieces?
Three-dimensional pieces either hang on the wall or in the round.
In the round would be something that's like on a stand.
On a table.
So one that I saw, we don't actually have an example to show the audience, but I saw it at a show that you did, was called Strange Loop, and that was kind of on a stand. It was.
I can upload that to the YouTube site if you'd like.
Yeah, we could post a link to it, absolutely. And so, as people can see, because they're looking at the link right now, it really struck me as being something that almost had a science fiction kind of look to it, and so there's science is kind of a topic that's going on in your artwork.
Yeah. Science in how it relates to understanding our physical realm. Because basically, a lot of my work is about trying. I mean, I see when we look out of our eyes, when we use our senses, we're perceiving the outer world, but we also have an inner world. Mm-hmm. So a lot of my work is trying to understand how those influence each other. Mm-hmm. Each of us have our own private inner world, and we all try to understand and perceive the outer world that surrounds us.
How is it that we have consciousness that gives us some form of internal representation that's generated by our brains that tells us about what's going on in the surrounding environment?
Right.
But then also, what is it about the properties of the matter in the surrounding environment that makes them the way that they are?
Yeah. I mean, and plus, you know, just because we seem to share an understanding of our environment, mm-hmm. because we obviously don't see it the same, in my mind.
As in, different people have different perceptions? Or?
Well, they have different points of view. For once, you know, I can't see out your eyes, you can't see out mine.
Well, we all exist in different places in space-time.
But it's also, you know, whatever you're seeing out of your own eyes is being influenced by your own history.
Right.
So everything is being colored by your own person. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so it's, all that I find interesting.
Yeah.
You know? You see how historians influence the perception of history.
Right.
For example.
Yeah. Well, and you can see that in the history of art. Say, for instance, the Western art around the Renaissance. All of a sudden, they're drawing things in perspective. And it's not like people didn't see things in 3 dimensions before. There was a different cultural mode of interpreting the visual image that people were seeing, and that as the culture becomes more interested in empirical science,
it influenced it. Yeah.
It influenced the artwork. To where, you know, in order to draw in perspective, you have to have sort of a very analytical, mathematical way of viewing things, and, you know, in terms of things tapering off in an angle as they become more distant. So that's a completely different way of perceiving the world that shows up in the artwork, and is, you know, you contrast that to, say, the cave paintings in Lascaux, okay, that are much more not abstract, but dreamlike, I guess you would say.
Expressionistic.
Expressionistic. That's probably the word I was looking for. It's always good to have someone here to help the talk show host think of words. So how is it that you and your artwork came to view using found objects as the medium of your art?
Well, this is something I hate to admit, but I'm somewhat of a pack rat, and I have rules about what I collect now.
Okay. Okay.
But to get back to but because I do this, and because I'm always curious about, how to make things more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
For example, when I was a kid, I made models, but I got really bored with following the rules of models.
Oh, right.
But I never could figure out how to make.
So you get a model kit, and it comes with the instructions, and
put it
right,
together,
yeah.
Like, oh, it looks just like the picture. How boring.
It's kind of like there's no creativity in that because it's already been decided by the people who designed the airplane and then the people who designed the model kit how you're supposed to go about doing it.
Yeah, precisely. So I was always frustrated because it's like I wish I could make my own.
Mm-hmm.
So that question stuck in my mind for a long time. But then when I would go visit my grandfather at his farm, he had a machine shed, which is where he would always repair all of his own farm implements and his combines and all this kind of stuff.
Oh, interesting.
So he did all his own machine work.
So you probably saw a lot of really interesting kind of mechanical shapes as a child then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Functioning and non-functioning, because behind the machine shed was where all the broken stuff would get.
Yeah.
And so I remember as a kid going out with my brother, who's 5 years younger than me, and we would sit out there and separate the good junk from the bad junk, simply because of how it looked.
Yeah.
Whether it was interesting looking, whether
aesthetically interesting,
whether it was rusty in a particularly cool way, or whatever, And so we would separate into two piles and have the good junk and the bad junk. And so
cool.
That's, if I were to point at one event in my life as far as why I am fascinated with found objects, is because of doing that as a kid when I was a teenager.
Oh wow, that is really fascinating. I always think it's interesting when you can draw a corollary between how people live their adult lives and things that happen in their childhood. And so it sounds like that was that whole experience of the machine shop and sorting out the junk. You'd say that was a major influence on the sorts of artwork that you're doing now?
Yeah, in fact, rather than just making them to piles, there was a chicken coop that was never used, that me and my sister and my brother, having taken the good junk and all the bones that we'd gathered on the farm.
Okay.
This was probably my first installation piece as a kid, but we created a haunted house in the chicken coop with all this metal bones hanging from the ceiling.
Oh, how cool is that?
So it was like,
wow.
It was up for years, but it was like, that was probably the first time I actually tried to make something out of things that I found.
Oh, that's really cool. And so that was sort of like a 3D environment you could walk through, and
well, kind of. Chicken coop was
a little
probably
cramped.
You had to bend over.
you had to hunch through it. Yeah. Well, that's really interesting, and it seems to me, I mean, just from hearing your description of it, sounds really similar to the artwork you're doing as an adult in a lot of ways.
It's definitely when I was in school, I learned how to do all the correct stuff. I can draw well. I can paint. I did super realism when I was a young adult, and
so you've had all the formal training, and
yeah, I've taught myself most of it.
Yeah.
But I found it not very satisfying. So I feel like I'm revisiting things. I'm sorry, I've lost track of you.
Oh, it's okay. What would you say what are you revisiting with your artwork? What in particular?
Well, the story of it that I just told you about the chicken coop.
Oh, okay.
One thing.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, I lost my thought.
Oh, that's okay. It happens. Anyhow, you do these great art pieces, found objects.
I just remembered.
Okay, go for it.
So, yes.
I was grasping for questions, so you can tell me.
So the correlation between that story I told you about the separating the good junk from the bad junk.
Yeah.
Got realized in my later life by tying that thought with wanting to make my own models.
Oh yes.
So when you take the found objects and start to make art out of them, it's like you're making your own model.
I see what you're saying.
And
yeah.
so to me, those two events is what brought me to the kind of work I made today.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. You know what that we're talking about the models, and that really brings to mind what I think is really fascinating is in the original Star Wars movie, the Death Star has the shots where they're flying along it, and it has all these really cool mechanical shapes. And how they made a lot of those was they went out and got a bunch of model kits and mixed and matched, cannibalized the pieces, mixed and matched them. So that's a perfect example of kind of going off the map, going off the instruction booklet and saying, look, these models have really cool shapes, but we don't necessarily have to use them in the way that that you're quote unquote supposed to. And what an interesting and influential work of art that was. I mean, that completely changed the way cinema, how movies are made now. Great. Well, I think that gives people a pretty good synopsis of your artwork there. If people want to see your artwork, you've got a show coming up.
Yes, I'm having a show at Felix Culpa on the 7th.
And that'll be the 7th of September.
So it'll be the first Friday of September. It's about 2 weeks away.
And for people who don't know, the first Fridays in Santa Cruz, we do a big, all the different galleries have their openings and have little banquets for the artists, and so you can do a tour around town and go to all the different galleries. It's always a really fun event. I always really enjoy it. And and Felix Culpa is right over there on Pacific Avenue behind the Streetlight Records.
Yep.
So that's opening on the 7th, and then how long will it be in the gallery?
It'll be through up to the 28th, so the full month.
Okay. Okay.
September.
Excellent. Very good. So people should go see that and see some more of Steve's artwork here. Great.
Colin, thank you for inviting me.
Hey, thanks for being on the show, Steve. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Pleasure.
All right. Yay! That's Steve on the Magic Box. And hey, let's get a close-up of the fish here. You're still running? Okay. Because, see, the thing about the Magic Box, I had this box, and the circumstances, the box had to be taken apart. But because it's magic, it can turn into a magic fish bowl. And it's kind of a box-shaped fish bowl, so that sort of works out. This is Sushi the fish. Don't worry, I'm not really going to eat him. It's just a joke. And so don't write animal rights hate letters or anything like that. And then I think it's also kind of a nice theme because the Magic Box sort of goes on inside kind of a fish bowl here, the fish bowl of Front Street. So we have a fish bowl within a fish bowl. So that's it. Everybody say hi to the fish, and that's a wrap.